Welcome to the Penny Z Show, where you get to learn how real people overcame real issues. Get ready to take notes and, most importantly, take action. Here's your host, Penny Z.
Hello, everyone. This is Penny Z with the Penny Z Show. We are here focusing on transforming lives one life at a time with real, relevant, and relatable topics. As many of you know, we are in a series called Overcoming I'm Not Enough. And today's guest is just an amazing. First off, I want to thank him because we don't always get very many men on the show. And so I'm excited to have Stephen on the show. But before we hear about his story and how he overcame his I'm not enough feelings, I'd like to give you a little bit of his bio. All right, our special guest here is Stephen Sashen. He is a serial entrepreneur, has never had a job, a former professional stand-up comic, and an award-winning screenwriter. He is also a competitive sprinter. Stephen is one of the fastest men over 55 in the country and maybe the fastest 55-plus Jew in the world. He's going to have to tell us about that. He and his wife, Lena Phoenix, co-founded the footwear company out of Colorado, Xero Shoes, created a movement which has helped hundreds of thousands of people live life feet first and happy, healthy, strong feet and addictively comfortable footwear. More information on that as well. Stephen and Lena also appeared on Shark Tank, where they turned down $400,000 offer from Kevin O'Leary. Please welcome to the Penny Z Show, Stephen. Stephen, welcome.
Thank you. The two things you didn't mention are that I've had a very long day, and so I'm having a bad hair day and didn't get to shave recently enough. So my apologies.
Well, you look fantastic. And,
it's very kind of you.
They're listening. If our listeners are listening on our podcast show, they won't see you. And if they would like to see how beautiful you look, how handsome you are, go to our YouTube page and obviously our website. So, Stephen, we're in a series called Overcoming I'm Not Enough. And we talked a little bit before starting the recording and starting the interview for the show. We met actually almost about 6 or 8 months ago at a New Media Summit podcast conference in Austin, Texas. But tell our listeners a little bit about you and your backstory.
Well, when a mommy loves a daddy very much, that's as far back as I can go. I as you said, I've been a serial entrepreneur. My favorite story about having a job or making money actually comes from my sister. When she was a freshman in college, she's a couple of years younger than I am. She called me and said, "Hey, how much allowance did Dad give you when you were a freshman?" I said, "Allowance? I've been working for a living since I was 13. She goes, "Oh, don't tell him I called." So I've done everything from stand-up comedy to screenwriting, inventing screenwriting software, real estate investing, stock system analysis. I've taught meditation all around the world. I've taught a class that was, let's call it, about applied behavioral economics. It's how to change or clear up your thinking about money and success and business and things like that. And then my wife and I were happily retired from about 2000 to 2009. And then we ended up starting a footwear company after we uttered the dangerous entrepreneurial phrase, "How hard could this be?" And here we are 9.5 years later with a rapidly growing business that is helping change people's lives 1 foot at a time.
Excellent. Well, we are happy for your success as well. And we're happy to have you here on the show. A whole lifetime of success. And our listeners would like to learn from you some of your tools and techniques in order to be that successful person, both personally as well as professionally.
Oh boy, I wish I had an easy answer for that. You know, it's funny you ask it that way because this is one of the things that human beings like to do. We like to imagine some scenario where we think we would be happier if we got there, and then assume that there's some reliable, repeatable path for doing that. And I'm actually not confident or convinced that that's the case. I think that a lot of it is a serious crapshoot, but then we do the best we can, and there's ways that we can optimize what we're doing or do the best we can as best as we can. I'm thinking about when I was in film school, I went to Columbia Film School, and one of our teachers was the director, Milos Forman. And someone said to Milos, "How do you make a good movie?" He goes, "Well, 90% of making movie is casting, and the other 10% is casting." And I think about like business that way. I think, 90% of it is luck. The other 10% is luck. And then there's a whole separate 100% that's working your butt off and trying to do that as well as you can. So if anything, I would argue that it's that plus one other thing, which is, frankly, given the context or the topic that we're talking about, this may be interesting. The only the biggest thought that I've ever had that's led to the things that I've done is like, maybe. And that's it. I don't really have, people ask me about confidence. I don't have confidence. I know I'm competent in certain things, but I know that everything I'm doing could fall apart tomorrow. And the things that I've done just seemed like they were interesting. And it occurred to me like, well, why not? And that's really it. I didn't have some positive belief, nor some negative belief, really. It was literally just kind of curiosity that led me for wherever I was going. And not everything worked out. But right now we got something that's going pretty well, and we're very happy with it.
Well, and sometimes it's in our trials and tribulations that we learn more than obviously in the success. But
absolutely.
Yeah, you obviously had success early on at 13 years old, you had mentioned. And so was there anything in your childhood that helped that? Or was it just something that was an innate in you? And how did you become that entrepreneur at 13?
Yeah, there was some research about the common factors for entrepreneurs. And the biggest common factor is that they come from a family of entrepreneurs. And I did. My father was a dentist. He had his own practice. My mother had her own business, a number of different businesses. Her father had his own business. My dad's father, actually, I don't remember what he did, but I kind of grew up in that milieu, just of this idea of, do this thing that you want to do. So that plus whatever genetic, something that made my brain do what it did. Again, it just never occurred to me not to just try and do something that I found interesting. And luckily, those things led to the ability to make a living.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Well, unfortunately, some kids don't have the benefit of having the support of successful mothers.
Oh, no. Wait, let me clear that up. I'm not saying I had support for this. I had it coming in. My dad was not at all supportive of anything that I did. My mother was like a quiet spectator, but all the things that I did, my father really never understood. And so when I was doing stand-up comedy and acting for a living, I remember he sent me an article from the New York Times about how less than 0.1% of all actors made enough money to even get the insurance that you would get from the Screen Actors Guild if you made a certain amount of money. And I had to call him back and go, I guess you don't get, I'm one of those guys. And so he never understood. When I was doing comedy, he came and saw me at a show. And after the show, he came up to me and he said, look, I understood that people were laughing at you, but I just don't find you funny. and so I just remember thinking that, it really wasn't personal. That was his hang up. And even if he didn't like it or wasn't approving of me, I didn't care. That was not my issue. And now, and that said, when my father died at his funeral, the number of people who came up to me who told me how they had told him, he had told them how proud he was of me was fascinating, because I literally said back to them, wow, in my whole life, he never said that to me. And I'm sure he had some reason, some thinking that led to that. But yes, I'm not saying that I was supported in this. It was just that I came from a family of it.
Okay, fair enough. I appreciate that. Yeah, unfortunately, my father passed away last year as well. And I think at our friends and family's funerals is when we find out some interesting stories that we wish we would have known or heard about with them being alive. And I heard several from my father. Oh, it's amazing. As well.
I had people who came up to me who only knew my father professionally, and they adored him. And it was so wonderful to hear those stories. I was so grateful that he died, that I got to hear those things, because I would have never heard them otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'd like for you, we talked about your overcoming I'm not enough, one of your I'm not enough stories. You don't have too many, which is awesome, and I congratulate you on that. But I would like for you to share the one that we were talking about earlier, just to kind of give our audience a little bit of understanding of your mindset and how you pulled through that.
Well, I got three that pop into my mind when you asked that question, so I'll hit you with the first one first. And this happened when I was 16 or 17 years old. I was a gymnast. I will give you the punchline that I eventually became an All-American gymnast. And the reason for saying that is simply that basically I was good, is the whole setup for this. But one day, I was working with two coaches, one who was not only my gymnastics coach, but he was my junior high school gym teacher. He just happened to be a 9-time world tumbling champion and 9-time national and 3-time world tumbling champion, and an amazing teacher. And a secondary coach that I worked with sort of off-site, if you will. And one night after practice, the secondary coach sat me down and he said, look, I know you have goals as a gymnast, but I got to be honest with you, you're just not that good. Here are the things that you can't do. And he gave me this long list of things that I could not do. And he says, if you want to be good, by now you should have been mastering these things, and you don't have them. And I was distraught. I mean, this has been 6 years of my life where I'd been working really hard and had very big goals. And to hear someone who I really respected really just call a spade, frankly, it pulled the rug out from underneath me very badly. My regular coach came up and found me in the locker room crying and asked me what was going on. And I told him, and he says, so look, everything he just said is true, which did not make me any happier. And he says, but let me ask you something. Why did your scores go from 8.4 on average last year to 9.1 on average this year? And it just stopped me in my tracks, and I didn't even have an answer. He goes, it's because those things you're not good at, but here are the things that you do better than anyone else on the planet, and you've gotten better at doing those things. And so while this is a very short-lived version of not enough, the thing that's interesting to me is what snapped me out of it, and what the important lesson that I got out of it was reality. I mean, that's what snapped me out of it, was the reality. Here's what you are good at. Here's what you're not good at. Here's the other context of getting better. And that really was a lifetime lesson of look at reality. And we'll come back to that in a second with my third story about not enough. But the second one is my favorite in a way. So I'm 5'5" on a good day. And I, back in the early days of internet dating, there was this period where the only women who were responding to me were like 6 feet tall. And I remember thinking, well, that's not going to happen, but we're having a great time hanging out online, so let's have dinner. So I made a date with this one woman. We had a wonderful time. I escorted her to her home. I said, well, that was great. We should definitely hang out again. And she says, well, you don't have to leave, And I went, I'm sorry, what? And we ended up seeing each other for quite a while. And after we split up, I ended up for like a year and a half, the only women who were responding to me were 6 feet tall plus. Now, when you're walking down the street of Boulder, Colorado, 5'5" with a super hot 6 foot tall blonde woman, what happens is guys and everyone sees her, then they look at me kind of curious, then they check her out, and then they really wonder about me, assuming that I'm either wealthy or a drug dealer is my guess. And it was a really interesting time for me because the reason I tell the story is I deliberately and specifically thought then that I had not had tall women on my radar at all because I thought, why would they want to have anything to do with me? And again, what was so wonderful about that period of time was that reality just beat me over the head and just said, yeah, the way you think of you has nothing to do with reality. Now, granted, there are tall women who had no interest in a guy shorter than them. And when I met them, my thought after this phase was like, wow, morons. But it was just a wonderful thing to just have reality be louder than my thoughts about myself, and thoughts about myself that I didn't even know that I had until reality showed me, which was really, really special. Now, granted, Lena, my wife of now 15 plus years, is shorter than I am. I don't know how that happened. But anyway, so the third one that I want to tell is really the one that is the biggie. And the fun version of this story is that one weekend in a kind of group workshop thing, I and a famous writer friend of mine both got called by 2/3 of the people in the room arrogant. Like literally 65 people told us how upset they were about how arrogant we were. A little while later, we're about to take a hike, and this other guy, this writer, comes bounding up to me, like really happy. He goes, don't you love it when they call you arrogant? And he just bounds away. And I was dumbstruck because I was thinking, no, I don't actually. I found it really upsetting. But he found it really interesting. Why is that? And I realized he'd made a living by being a writer who, what made him successful was being smarter than other people in the room. So for him, people calling him arrogant, he took that as, hey, I've succeeded. And I did not see it that way at all. And I was going, so why is this such a big deal for me? And I realized that the only reason that I would want to come across in this way that seemed, quote, better than, was because I wanted to cover up something where I felt less than. And I never really had a less than about being 5'5", but I definitely had this thing where I wanted to be smart or seen as smart or competent or something. There's nothing I liked less than when my dad would send me on errands and I'd, go to some store and say, hey, I'm looking for a Phillips head, blah, blah, blah. And they go, what? I just, hated that not knowing what I was doing thing. And I thought, okay, so I have this idea that I'm not good enough in some way. And it occurred to me to do something really radical, which again goes back to the whole reality thing and evidence. I just started looking for the proof. Like, where's the evidence that everything that I could think of about how I'm not enough or not smart enough or not whatever enough, let me find the proof that it is unequivocally true and not maybe just some function of being human. And I spent, it really didn't take very long. I'd spent an hour just looking at everything that I could have ever thought that was proof that there was something wrong. And I just looked to see if it was true, or I looked to see if it was something that every other human being in the world thinks or feels, because if it's true, it's just a function of being human. And I ran out of answers. I couldn't find any proof. I'm not saying that means that I was better or perfect or whatever, but I just couldn't find any proof, any evidence for there's something wrong with me thought. Or I couldn't find any situation where that thought wasn't just, again, the way human beings work. Like, I don't like the way my body looks or feels. Well, I've never met anyone who does. And in fact, the way we evolved, we're not good at looking at a glass of water and determining if there's bacteria in there. So we're hypersensitive to what happens inside of ourselves with no good reason anymore. So we're all always aware of something that could go wrong or isn't right. That's the way we stayed alive. So after being able to not find any evidence for there being a problem or anything that was anything other than a function of being human, the whole there's something wrong with me thing, just it's like looking in the mirror and seeing someone else's face or trying to make yourself believe you see something other than what you see. I am not a tall Black woman. It would be like trying to convince myself that I'm a tall Black woman. It just, the thought there's something wrong with me just couldn't stick any longer. Mm-hmm. And fundamentally never came back. And so now if someone says, calls me arrogant, my response is, oh my God, you have no idea. It's way worse in my own head. And it's something that I wish didn't happen, but it's the way it happens in my mind, or sometimes it comes out in the tone of my voice, which is not my intention. And if you have any suggestions, I am all ears, because I'd rather be more consistent if I can, but I haven't found a way to do that consistently. And usually that turns into people saying, you have no idea. Here's what happens in my head. And we have a fine time comparing notes about how we're arrogant in different ways about different things.
Absolutely. I love having those three stories and them all tying into, like you had said, reality. One of the things that kept coming back in my mind was limited beliefs, and like you said, our mind really plays tricks on ourselves. And the more we stay in our mind, the worse it could potentially be, or the better, depending on, the positive negativity, that the self-talk that you're talking to. I grew up with overcoming I'm not enough. So my world was more negative self-talk. And I just, within a matter of recognizing that, flip the button, turn the switch on and change that talk to more positivity. But the word just kept coming to mind, limited. We have limited beliefs about ourselves, and that manifests.
Yeah. And I would agree with that. And I've come to the point where I just don't care what I think about me. Positive, negative, I don't care. It's just a thought that arose. It's going to pass. If it's true and I don't care, great. If it's not true and I don't care, great. I don't really take it personally. There's so much of what's happened for my life that the luck factor is so high that I can't take responsibility for it. I'm happy that I was able to participate in it. And look, the bottom line is I'm going to die at some point. So when push comes to shove, I don't care how much positivity there is at a certain point. It's going to all stop and go away. And I'm kind of ready for that one as well. I'm not looking forward to it immediately. I hope I've got some time to kind of chill out and enjoy what things that I'm planning for in the future. But no one has used positive self-talk to keep them out of a grave.
Mm-hmm. Well, we hope so, obviously, for many years to come, because you've got a lot to give to yourself, your family, and to the world. So, but I love what you were talking about. Don't care. I mean, that is actually an area that I've really explored, and those people that are successful personally and professionally have that mentality. They have I don't care what you think about me. I don't care if this is right or wrong. I don't care if you tell me I can't do it. I'm going to push forward. And a lot of what I'm learning for myself is things are not good or bad. They just are. It depends on whether we choose to make it good, bad, or emotional or non-emotional, or care or not care. Reality just is.
And our, I'm going to add one little twist to that, which is our response to what is also something that's not necessarily in our control, typically isn't. And so if we have a unpleasant response and we end up, in some little death spiral of thinking, then, the best you can do is wait till that passes, because it will, and then just take a look and see what it was about that thing. Like I came up with this exercise where I would have people stand across from each other, and one would walk to the other. And as they're walking towards each other, one would say, let me see if I can do this with you. Pretending that we're doing the exercise, I would tell you the worst thing that you could possibly say about me, the thing that just gets me the most upset. And then we would walk right at each other from opposite sides of the room. And your job was to tell me that thing. And my job is to avoid hitting you, like not walk into you and make a U-turn at the last possible second while still maintaining eye contact and respond to you with something true. Like, I think that too sometimes, or you don't know the half of it, or I agree. What do you suggest? And just having that experience of having people say these things that we try not to have people say, make it out loud and make it something where we can really experience it in this kind of controlled environment, also made it disappear. When I would teach people how to do this exercise, and I would say, write down the worst thing that anyone would say about you, people would write it down, they'd be very upset, and then tell the other person what one. Try saying this one and say it with this attitude so it sounds like my mom. And it was a whole different thing where suddenly the worst thing anyone could say was like hysterical, because it's only bad because you didn't like it about yourself because you hadn't examined it. And then you've been trying to hide it and you weren't successful at that either because someone else obviously knew. Once it's out in the open and you can examine it and find out that, again, there's nothing supporting it, or it's just a function of being human, then what's the big deal? We agree with each other. Here's the most horrible thing I could possibly reveal about myself right now. I know some people will really hate this. I was dating a woman. I'm gonna save the punchline. I was dating a woman who one day said to me, "Do you think you'd be more attracted to me if I was thinner?" And I, as if she just asked me what time it was, said, "Oh yeah." Now, after she screamed and yelled at me for 30 minutes, I said, hold on. You've been spending $600 a month to go to Jenny Craig. You think you'd be more attracted to you if you were thinner. We agree. I don't know why you're arguing with me. Now, years later, it turned out she told me at the beginning of our relationship, she lied and told me she weighed 50 pounds less than she actually did. And I went, oh, well, that also puts a whole new spin on the whole thing. So I'm one of these horrible people who will just give you a straight answer to a question like that. It's a nervous tick, I think. But suffice it to say, if somebody says something unpleasant about me and I have that same thought about me, why would I argue with them? We agree that this is the thing that's unpleasant about me. So we agree. So cool. Let's have that conversation.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I've experienced that as well. And I think for me, not only having that conversation with someone, if someone were to say that to me and I'd have that conversation in the past, I would have responded like your ex-girlfriend, been very upset, been all emotional, gotten mad, broken up, who knows what emotionally. Nowadays, if somebody said that to me, I would look at it differently. I would say, okay, it's neither good nor bad. It is. I asked a question. It's a response. How am I going to interpret?
Yeah. What do you want to do with that information? Now you know.
What do I want to interpret? Yeah. And you can't control the other person. You can't control their feelings or their emotions or their response or whether they care or they don't care. All you can do is control what it is that you decide to do with that information or that situation.
And you can't necessarily do that in real time because, if you get spun out, my line is you can't be smart when you're stupid. And so if you're spinning out, you got to wait till the spinning stops. Then you can take a look and then you can come back and, start again. And then maybe if you do this enough times, in the middle of one of those spin outs, it'll stop a little faster or you'll have a little wake up call or it might not happen as much. But, even the response we have is as out of control as the other person's response as well. And when we have the presence of mind to take a look at reality, that we take the opportunity when it shows up. At least that's my experience.
Absolutely. Well, Stephen, I could just keep talking to you for hours and have multiple conversations with you. You've given us such an enormous amount of wisdom and little pearls in each story. Things that I wrote down here was, do what you do well and keep doing that. You're like, well, I've got stuff over here I don't do well, so let's have somebody else do that. I'm going to continue to do what I do well. Don't care what other people think, and maybe even what you think at times. I love that mindset. Reality, that was something you shared with us, And then another area that I put is one of the things that you looked at when you were called arrogant or in a different situation is look and evaluate the proof. So I wanted to ask you, there's two things I want to ask you as we're getting ready to close the Penny Z show today. Number one, do you have any other words of wisdom, either in support of what we talked about or in addition to share with our listeners? And then secondly, obviously, if there's anything you would like to promote, your business, Xero Shoes or anything like that, please do so as well.
Well, so I'm kind of smiling because for me to think of anything that I might share as wisdom is a level of arrogance that I can't possibly get to. So I just don't have that one. If anything I've said is useful, that's wonderful. And if not, that's also fine. I'm not trying to change the world that way. So I wish I could answer that one, but I literally can't think of anything that I would say. So the other part, in the changing the world part is a simple thing. What I like to say to people is, do your feet feel better at the end of the day than they did at the beginning? And if the answer is no, then it could be because you haven't been wearing the right shoes, not because there's something wrong with you. And it's not that you have a choice, because most shoes are all exactly the same. They squeeze your toes together. They elevate your heel, which messes with your posture. They don't let you feel the ground. Your feet are made to bend and move and flex and feel. And we've developed footwear that lets them do that. You get all the fun and benefits of natural movement, of just like being barefoot, but with protection and style. We have shoes and sandals, casual and performance, that people use for everything from taking a walk to running 100-mile ultramarathons. So you can find us at Xero Shoes. That's Xero Shoes.com. Although if you went to Zero, you'd get to us eventually as well. And we hope you get to check us out and have the experience of living life feet first.
Absolutely. Well, to all of our listeners, we will have all of Stephen's information on our website and our social media. It has been truly a pleasure and an honor to be able to have a conversation with you today. We wish you all the best, continued success. And when I'm in Colorado, I will come by and say hi. So
definitely do.
Thank you so much, Stephen. I appreciate it. All right. This is Penny Z with the Penny Z Show. And we thank you and have a great day.
Thank you so much for listening. If you want to hear more, including specific ways to empower yourself, go to thepennyzshow.com.